My name is Samantha. That morning I sat in the small kitchen, where sunlight streamed through the glass window onto the polished wooden table. The familiar coffee cup was still warm in my hand, but its bitterness no longer woke me up like it used to. I ran my finger across the phone screen. My usual morning habit, checking work emails, some news, a few messages from my old friend group. And then it appeared. A short video, looping again and again. Natalie's radiant smile. My husband's cousin. Along with the clink of glass cups, the backdrop a sparkling luxury yacht deck under the sun. The caption hit me like a cold blade. The family is about to set off on the annual trip aboard Charlotte's Grace. So excited! Charlotte's Grace. The yacht named after my mother-in-law, Charlotte, and the pride my husband's family always mentioned at every gathering. A family trip? A tradition for nearly 15 years? But this time, I was clearly not in that picture. I blinked, the emptiness spreading from my chest. It took a few seconds before I was calm enough to open the next posts. The images appeared one by one. My in-laws, Charlotte and Donald, raising glasses in a toast. My brother-in-law, Sean, hugging a new girlfriend I'd never been introduced to. And Jeremy, my husband, standing there, smiling at ease, as if everything was right where it belonged. I stared at the screen, my finger frozen mid-scroll. Every message in the Miller family Connect and Love group was silent. No notification, not a single explanation for why I'd been left out. I sat still, the coffee in my cup completely cold. The silence in the kitchen now sounded like a scream. Not because I was excluded, but because I realized how long I had comforted myself, thinking everything was just a misunderstanding. That Natalie might have accidentally left me out of her birthday invite 3 years ago. That Charlotte was truly too busy to remind me about the Christmas party at the lake house. I thought of last Thanksgiving, when Jeremy promised to pick me up after his company meeting but never came, and I quietly had dinner alone in the apartment, pretending not to care when my mother called to check in. One by one, those moments came rushing back like a fierce wave. Charlotte's birthday dinner I only saw in photos after everyone had gone home. Natalie's pointed comment at a brunch. We always keep traditions for blood family only. I set the phone down on the table, my breath heavy. All these years, I had tried to fit in, to please, to endure every careless word or cold glance. The wind chime on the porch softly rang as the breeze passed through. I looked out the window at the clear blue sky stretching endlessly. I knew, from that moment on, things could not go on as before. I no longer sat there guessing, no longer waited for someone to speak up. Awakening is never sweet, but it is necessary. And I was awake. When Jeremy came home that afternoon, I was still at the table, a new cup of coffee gone cold again. He walked in, slightly surprised. You didn't go out? I looked up, my voice light but firm. Your family went on the yacht trip, didn't they? Jeremy froze, his eyes shifting away. The trip? Maybe Mom didn't get a chance to tell you. I didn't need to ask anymore. The answer was already in that evasive look. That evening, when Jeremy had fallen asleep on the familiar sofa, I sat alone in the office, the desk lamp's light casting sharp shadows on the papers. I opened my phone, my cold hands steady as I scrolled through my inbox. Not because I hoped for an apology, but because I wanted to see just how deeply the truth had been hidden. And then, it appeared. An email from the yacht rental company, a short subject line. Cabin cancellation confirmation, Charlotte's Grace. I opened it, my eyes scanning the content quickly. Cabin number 5 requested by Natalie Jones. Request time, 3 days ago? I took a deep breath. At this point, Natalie's pretense felt more ridiculous than ever. No more misunderstanding, no more oversight. This was orchestrated, and I had just reached the edge of my endurance. Before I could put down the phone, another message popped up, from Natalie herself. A message not meant for me but sent by mistake. Don't worry, it's done. Samantha won't be coming. Everything's handled. See you on deck. I sat still, eyes on the screen, letting the notification chime ring out once more and fade. Strange, I didn't feel the pain I thought I would. only clarity, as if the final pieces of the puzzle had fallen into place. I set the phone down, opened the bottom drawer of the desk. From deep inside, I pulled out the file I had kept for myself all this time. Inside was the purchase contract copy for Charlotte's Grace. Every figure, every signature clear. The person who paid the first deposit and covered the maintenance for 7 years? Me. My name right at the top of the ownership list, before Jeremy's. I flipped through the pages, transfer receipts from my account to the shipbuilder, email confirmations for the interior design I had painstakingly reviewed late at night. Just then, an email alert sounded. I opened my inbox. It had a message from the law firm Jeremy's family, usually used for handling assets. I frowned as I read the subject. Proposal to amend yacht ownership, Charlotte's Grace. The content was brief, but enough to make my blood run cold. Dear Natalie Jones, attached is the draft adjustment for Charlotte's Grace yacht ownership as requested, removing Samantha Miller's name from the ownership list for ease of family asset management. Please confirm. I printed out that draft, set it on the table, then leaned back in my chair. There were no more tears for things like this. In the quiet room, only the ticking of the clock remained, each click a reminder that this truth had existed for a long time. I had just opened my eyes to face it. I gathered every sheet of paper, every contract, every confirmation email into a hard file folder. I named it The Truth. Every document was arranged carefully, neatly, not a single sheet out of place. Finally, I opened my journal and wrote just one line. No one needs to validate my worth. Only I need to know it and protect it. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, looking out at the city under soft yellow lights. In the morning, the sun would rise as always, and I knew what I had to do. I would no longer wait for anyone to give me a place. I would claim it myself, inch by inch. Early the next morning, I stood by the window, watching the thin mist cover the city's gray rooftops. The house was still quiet, only the steady hum of the coffee machine coming from the kitchen. Jeremy was still asleep on the sofa, his breathing soft and heavy. I put on a long coat, opened my laptop, and booked a ride to the Miami marina where Charlotte's Grace was docked. I wasn't preparing for a vacation, I was preparing for the truth. Every document I needed was packed neatly in a black leather bag: the yacht purchase contract, transfer receipts, correspondence, the draft ownership amendment Natalie had secretly asked the law firm to prepare. Each paper, each number was a piece of the story they had tried to erase me from. I chose a simple navy dress, added a light-colored blazer. No flashy jewelry, no elaborate makeup. I wasn't going to please anyone. The ride took me along the coastal roads. The sea shimmered under the morning sun, each wave glinting like glitter on the water's surface. When the car stopped at the marina, I saw Charlotte's Grace from a distance, the spotless white hull, the deck sparkling in the sunlight. I pulled my leather bag beside me, each step steady on the wooden dock. As I drew closer, I saw them. Natalie in a floral maxi dress, holding a glass of wine, standing next to my mother-in-law. Charlene, who was laughing with a few guests. Jeremy was there too, standing a little apart. His face tensed, despite trying to hide it. The moment they saw me, it was as if time froze. The smile on Natalie's lips stiffened. Charlotte's eyes went wide with shock. A few guests turned, puzzled by what was happening. But I didn't stop. I walked straight to the gangway. A crew member in a dark navy uniform approached, bowing politely. "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Samantha. It's a pleasure to greet the owner on board." That greeting rang out clearly, not just for me but for everyone present. I glanced at Natalie. Her face was pale, her fingers clutching the wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. I met his gaze, my tone steady. "Thank you. Please allow me to board." "Of course, ma'am." I stepped onto the deck, leaving behind stunned faces and hushed whispers. The sea breeze blew gently, carrying the scent of salt and mist. I felt my chest open, as if for the first time in years I was truly breathing freely. On deck, the crew stood at attention greeting me. A gray-haired man, probably the captain, stepped forward. "The yacht is ready to depart whenever you give the word." I looked out to where the horizon blurred into a faint line. "We'll depart once all our guests are aboard." Without turning, I could feel Natalie's flustered attempts to explain herself to the guests. I walked straight into the main cabin, where the familiar scent of walnut wood and leather surrounded me. There wasn't an item here I hadn't personally chosen. I lightly touched the table's edge, the cool feel of the inlaid metal grounding me more than ever. Behind me, the hurried click of Natalie's heels echoed. Samantha, you don't have to make such a big deal out of it. I turned, my gaze steady and cold. The big deal. I'm simply boarding my own yacht. Natalie pressed her lips together, saying nothing more. She turned, trying to regain her composure, but I knew everything had cracked. I stepped out to the rail, the sea breeze tossing my hair. Below on the dock, Jeremy looked up, his eyes filled with guilt and helplessness. But this time, I no longer waited for him to speak. No longer needed anyone to stand up for me. When the gentle hum of the engines signaled readiness, I gave a small nod to the captain. Let's go. That dinner on Charlotte's Grace that night was prepared elaborately as if to prove something to the guests. The crystal chandelier cast a warm glow over the long table draped in pristine white linen. Shining silverware and crystal wineglasses were neatly arranged next to the delicate appetizer plates. Natalie sat at the head of the table, still trying to maintain her confidence, her hands gripping the wineglass like she was clinging to the last bit of control she had left. Charlotte sat beside her, her gaze distant as she looked out the window where the sunset had turned the horizon red. Jeremy sat near the end of the table, occasionally glancing at me but quickly looking away, as if he couldn't bear to face me. I stayed silent for half the meal, listening to the scattered conversations, the praises about the trip, about the family, about the legacy they were so proud of. The sound of cutlery against plates echoed louder in the quiet than they realized. As the main course was served, I opened my leather bag and took out the file I had prepared. One by one, I placed the documents in the center of the table. The yacht purchase contract with my signature and name listed as the main investor, the receipts for the full deposit transfer, the email confirming the design and interior completion, and finally, a copy of the recording of the call between Natalie and the law firm where she had tried to have my name removed from the ownership list. No one said anything. The unfinished conversations fell silent. Their eyes shifted from the documents to me, then back to Natalie. Even softly spoken, my words rang out with clarity. I think it's time the truth was placed on the table, along with this dinner. Natalie froze, her face pale, the forced smile completely gone. Samantha, you misunderstood. This was just a technical issue. There was no bad intent. I looked her straight in the eye, not with anger, just a quiet that made her lower her gaze. A technical issue? When you asked to have me removed from ownership of an asset I created? When you mistakenly sent that message saying I wouldn't be coming? When you canceled the cabin I had booked and told everyone it was a mix-up? The tension rose. Every eye was on Natalie. Charlotte's lips moved, but no words came out. Jeremy finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Samantha, I didn't know about this. I turned to him, my expression steady. Then why didn't you ask? You were right there, when they talked about me, when they held gatherings I was never invited to. He fell silent, head bowed, his hand clenched into a fist on his thigh. For the first time, I saw real shame in his eyes. Some guests began whispering, their murmurs unable to hide their unease. One of Jeremy's cousins cleared his throat and said, as if to ease the tension, "Maybe we should hear Samantha out completely." Their words pierced the false front they'd worked so hard to hold up. I carried on, my tone as calm as ever. I no longer need permission to speak. All these years I stayed silent, thinking I was keeping the peace, thinking that if I were kind enough, they'd acknowledge me. But today, I'm not sitting here asking for acceptance. I'm here to remind you, the truth can't be erased by lies. Natalie opened her mouth, but only shallow, ragged breaths came out. Charlotte set her napkin on the table, her hands trembling slightly. I didn't know Natalie would take it this far. I looked at her, my gaze no longer blaming, just weary. You don't need to say anything else, Charlotte. Everything is here right on the table. Jeremy stood up as if to speak but only sighed, his eyes filled with regret. I should have spoken up long ago. I said nothing. I simply collected the papers, each sheet a reminder of what I had built despite them. I placed the file back in my bag, looked at everyone one last time, my voice soft but firm. This dinner doesn't need me to end it, the truth already has. Then I left the table, stepping out onto the deck. The night breeze blew through my hair, the sea continued to murmur, indifferent to the falsehoods people could create. That night I remained alone on the deck, the city lights in the distance twinkling like a strip of stars sinking into the night sea. No music, no praise, only the gentle sound of waves against the hull. I rested my hand on the cold railing, breathing in the salty air deeply. Inside the main cabin, dinner ended in awkward silence. I could hear chairs scraping back hastily, disjointed farewells, hurried footsteps searching for excuses to leave. No one dared mention what had happened. No one knew what to say to cover the gap that had just opened between them and the truth. My phone vibrated softly. A message from Callista, a friend from college, now a freelance journalist. She had always been perceptive, and it seemed she had been following what happened through the scattered livestream clips Natalie had posted earlier. Sam, I just published it. They can't keep hiding it anymore. The article's being shared like crazy. I opened the link Callista sent. The headline appeared clear and without flashy words. The woman they tried to erase. The truth behind a stolen legacy. Callista wrote with a sharp but fair pen. She recounted what had happened. The quiet ways I was excluded from family events. The effort to erase my name from the assets I had built with my own hands. The secret phone calls. The calculated ownership drafts. Below the article, hundreds of shares appeared in less than an hour. Comments poured in. The story feels so familiar, like what I went through. Not blood, but truly the one with heart and contribution. People stay silent when there's nothing left to say. She chose silence and the truth spoke for itself. I scrolled through each comment, not seeking defense, but to see myself through the eyes of strangers. People who knew me only through a few lines, yet saw what Jeremy's family tried to hide. The next morning, the atmosphere on the yacht was suffocating. Natalie was no longer posing for pictures, no longer live streaming wine toasts. She avoided my gaze, and even the gaze of those who once surrounded her with flattery. Charlotte sat in the reading room, silent behind the half-closed door. Jeremy found me on the deck, his look weary. "Ha ha ha, it's all out there now, isn't it?" I took a moment, my gaze fixed on the sea, my voice low, but steady, as I answered. "The truth doesn't need anyone to guard it. It finds its own way." He nodded, like a man finally understanding what he should have seen long ago. Later that day, Callista messaged again. "Sam, a major media outlet just contacted me to reprint the piece. You won't be hidden in the shadows anymore." Natalie had no defense left. The comments, posts, and hashtags calling for fairness for me flooded the internet. The truth was loud enough. I didn't have to say anything more. My silence became the weapon they hadn't expected. The one that shattered Natalie's perfect facade, piece by piece. That evening I passed through the main lounge where Natalie sat frozen, her eyes hollow, staring at nothing. On the table in front of her, her phone screen flashed with endless notifications. She looked up when she saw me, as if to speak, but only lowered her face, her voice nearly gone. "You've won." I stopped, my gaze calm, no anger left. I didn't need to win, I only needed to reclaim what was mine. In the days that followed, there were no more loud parties or lively conversations on the deck. Instead, there were long silences, avoided glances, apologies stuck in throats that no one had the courage to speak. I kept my own peace. Each morning, I walked along the deck, looking at the vast open sea. The sea doesn't need anyone's recognition to be the sea, and neither do I. One afternoon, as I sat in the reading room with a cup of hot tea, the door opened slightly. "Sean?" Jeremy's younger brother stepped in, looking more awkward than I'd ever seen him. He paused before me for a few seconds, his eyes filled with regret. "Yamantha, I should have said something before." I looked up, saying nothing, waiting for him to continue. I saw what Natalie was doing wasn't right, but I thought staying silent was best to avoid tension. Now I see that silence is complicity too. I nodded gently, neither blaming nor rushing to forgive. He understood, sighed, and quietly left. Not long after, one of Jeremy's aunts, Ruth, known for protecting the family's image, came to me in the lounge. She held a plate of homemade cookies, set it on the table in front of me, her voice softer than usual. Samantha, I was wrong not to speak up for you. I shouldn't have pretended not to see. I looked at her, my hand still cradling my tea. That acknowledgement, though late, was worth more than 100 excuses. That evening Jeremy found me as I stood at the rail, watching the last streak of sunlight sink into the sea. The sea breeze tossed my hair, and I felt his gaze behind me. Samantha, I've been thinking a lot. I didn't turn around, letting him find the truest words he could. I can't change what's happened, but I can fix what's left. I've called the lawyer. I want to transfer full ownership of the yacht to you, just as it should have been from the start. I turned, my gaze direct without anger or emotion. Jeremy, I don't need a piece of paper to prove my worth. I need respect. And I need you to understand that's what matters most. He bowed his head, his shoulders trembling slightly, as if the weight he'd carried for years finally pressed down on him. I was a coward, Sam. I let you stand alone when I should have been by your side. The only thing you can do, he lifted his head, his voice rough, is to never stay silent again. That night, I sat on the deck for a long time, watching the night sea shimmer under the thin moonlight. There was no longer a need to prove anything, no need to seek anyone's approval. The old ties that once bound me like chains had loosened, leaving me with a rare peace. The next morning when Charlotte approached me on the deck, she paused for a moment. Her voice so soft the sea breeze almost carried it away. Samantha, thank you for not choosing to destroy everything. In the weeks after the trip on Charlotte's Grace, I returned to my home with a completely different spirit. The small lake house that once felt lonely now became the place where I felt the most at peace. Every morning, I made my own coffee, opened the window to welcome the sunlight and fresh breeze, and reminded myself, I no longer have to try to please anyone. One weekend morning I decided to host a simple brunch, no flashy invitations, no endless guest list, just for appearances. I invited the people who truly saw me, who stood by me when I had nothing but myself. Callista arrived first, bringing a tray of warm fruit tarts, her eyes lighting up as she looked around the familiar kitchen. I knew it, Sam. You've always been someone who builds, not someone who asks permission to step in. Ronald, the lawyer who helped me protect what was mine, came next, carrying a bottle of homemade apple cider. He smiled. Now this is what a real family gathering looks like, Samantha. Maddie, the only cousin from my ex-husband's family I kept in touch with, gently set a basket of fresh flowers on the table. I owe you a thank you for teaching me to be braver. We sat around the wooden table on the porch, where sunlight filtered through the vine-covered trellis, dotted with tiny flowers. No one needed to perform. No one needed hollow praise. We simply talked about real things, work, dreams, simple but meaningful plans. No invitations went to Charlotte, Natalie, or anyone who held the title of family without truly standing by me. A small table with people who value what's real is worth far more than a lavish feast filled with empty chairs. At the end of brunch, after everyone had left, I received a message from Maya, Natalie's niece, a girl I had only met a few times at family gatherings. The message was short but sincere. My Aunt Samantha, I know this might be sudden, but I'm getting ready to apply for a startup support program. Could I ask you to take a look and give me some advice? I admire how you built everything with your own hands. I stared at that message for a long while, then smiled. Maya had always been a quiet girl, her eyes bright and thoughtful in the middle of noisy parties. I replied right away. Send it over, Maya. I'm happy to help. Her documents came just a few hours later, a small but heartfelt idea to open an organic bakery serving the student community near her school. The plan was still rough, but I could see the genuine effort in every line. I spent the whole evening reviewing it, making notes and suggestions. Not because Maya was Natalie's family, but because I saw my younger self in her hesitation, but determined heart. The next morning, I video called Maya. Her eyes sparkled with hope behind glasses that slipped slightly down her nose. I've read it carefully. Your idea is good, but you'll need to adjust the financial and marketing plans. I'll send you reference materials, and if you want, I'll guide you step by step. Maya's head bobbed eagerly, her voice trembling with joy. Thank you. I didn't think you'd agree to help me so easily. I looked at her, feeling lighthearted. Everyone needs someone to give them a chance to begin. That Sunday, as I sat alone on the porch, my cup of chamomile tea still warm in my hands, I suddenly understood. A true legacy isn't a yacht, a house, or any asset. A legacy is what we plant in the hearts of others. And I had started planting my seeds in the simplest way. That morning, as sunlight streamed through the window, I began tidying up the old drawer in my study. For years I had filled it with files, papers, things I once thought were proof to protect myself. Now they were just traces of a journey I no longer needed to prove to anyone. As I neatly packed each file into a storage box, my hand touched a small yellowed piece of paper. I unfolded it. My father's bold, steady handwriting appeared clearly. Don't fight for a seat. Build your own table. I froze, a warm, indescribable feeling rising in my chest. I didn't remember exactly when he had written that for me. Maybe in a birthday card or on a slip of paper tucked into my suitcase when I left home for the first time. All I knew was that now, it appeared at the perfect moment. Like a gentle but powerful reminder. I folded the paper back up, placing it in a small wooden box beside my desk. Outside the window, the garden whispered in the breeze, the green leaves shimmering in the morning sun. I sat in the chair by the window, my hands cradling my tea, letting peace fill each breath. My phone vibrated. A message from Maya. Aunt Samantha, I just submitted my application. Thank you for helping me feel more confident than ever. I read those words, my lips curling into a soft smile. No grand banquets, no flowery praise, just a sincere message was enough to let me know I was on the right path. That afternoon, I set up another wooden table on the porch. The one I had once bought from the small workshop of a single mother I knew. I laid out simple dishes with my own hands, a vase of wildflowers freshly picked from the roadside. The table didn't need to be fancy, only wide enough to welcome those who value what's real. Calista stopped by, bringing a printed copy of the article about my story, now featured prominently in a respected magazine. She set it on the table, looking at me. Sam, you've done what not everyone has the courage to do. I gently flipped through the pages, but my eyes stayed on the garden, where the sunlight painted the grass gold. No one else needs to write me a new chapter, Calista. I just need to write it in my own way. In the afternoons that followed, I often sat at that table, not to wait for anyone to stop by, but to remind myself. I had stopped seeking a seat at tables set by others. I had built my own table, with effort, with determination, and with scars that had healed. That day, as the sunset slowly fell, I stepped into the garden, my bare feet touching the cool, soft grass. The sky was clear, the breeze carried the scent of wildflowers. I looked up at the vast sky, feeling my heart light. No more burdens, no more longing for anything. My story was no longer about a yacht or the rejection of a family. It became a journey where I learned to build my own worth without asking permission or seeking anyone's approval. I chose quiet strength, letting the truth speak for itself. The legacy I keep is not material wealth, but independence, self-respect, and the inspiration I offer to those brave enough to start with their own hands. What do you think about Samantha's story and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the channel to explore more meaningful stories about life, family, and growth.